Hey everybody, it is Kristen and...
What's up? Zach here.
It's been a long time.
It has been a while.
Welcome back.
On video.
Where you been?
Been around. Still married to you.
Actually, this is our bedroom, so you're
always
here.
Yeah, I've been around here, yeah.
We are so excited to share our adoption story with you guys. If you haven't heard, we recently, within past 3 months, adopted 2 boys from the country of Ukraine. So international adoption. They are ages 11 and 7 now, 10 and 6 when we adopted them. So they actually had birthdays recently, which was so sweet to get to celebrate that with them. We did a this is going to be like a Reader's Digest version of the story, like really short and fast for the sake of not making this like an hour, 2 hours long. But we did do a podcast conversation. We shared the full story.
Extra full
With lots of details, answered a lot of your questions at the end of that. So go check out the Girl Defined show and look for, it's called our Ukrainian adoption story, and you can get the full story there. But we're just going to give you like a flyover. If you're like, I don't want all the details, I want the flyover, this is for you. So take us back, like let's do a quick flyover of what brought us to the point of adopting, like the journey that we were on for the last 10 years.
Well, as many of you know, we've been dealing with infertility for the last 10 years. We just had our 10-year anniversary, which is crazy. And
10 years of marriage.
Been through multiple miscarriages, and you know, people had always asked us, like, you know, what about adoption? What about adoption? We thought about it, and we had gone through those scenarios in our heads, and we're not against it by any means.
No.
We were for adoption, to be sure, but it just, God was not leading us in that direction at that point in time throughout the first 10 years. And then here came COVID, and we were locked down in our house, and we were thinking and praying. And so I guess really you could say that the time kind of secluded in our home together, where we were more just around each other and had the opportunity to think about it, pray about it, read about it, was an important kind of step in that direction. Like
to thinking about it. Yeah, I remember right before COVID hit, I was out at a Girl Defined lunch, and I shared this in the podcast, and one of my sisters just asked me the question, like, hey, have y'all thought any more about adoption? Because, you know, we've told our family, like, hey, it's always on the table. It's always something we're praying about and like seeking the Lord's guidance on, but we did not have a peace about moving forward or really feel like God was opening doors or just pushing us in that direction. But my sister asked me that question, and then it got us talking. And then, you know, I was kind of just saying different things like, I just don't feel like the timing's right, or I don't know if it's the right path for us. And, you know, there's just so many unknowns, and it's expensive and can be complicated, and there can be, you know, just like, all the things. And she just kind of asked me, like, do you think fear is at the root of maybe your hesitation? Like, super sweetly asked me. And like, as a good sister would, like, do you think fear, because she was sensing a lot of fear in what I was saying. Okay, small cell phone interruption. So my sister asked me, do you think fear is at the root of why you're like not wanting to move forward with adoption or whatever? And so in that moment, it was like, I'd never thought about that. And I realized it was like a light bulb went off in my heart and my head of actually, yes. Like the thought of adopting and going down that road with so many unknowns and, you know, so, like potential heartbreak and things that can go wrong and just all these unanswered questions. It was almost too much. I think having gone through 3 miscarriages and experienced like the hope and then the loss and the grief, I was like, I just don't even know. Like that's scary to me. Pursuing adoption, there was just a lot of fear. And for the first time, I saw that. And that kind of took me on a personal journey of really wanting to, I guess, grow. And I really sought the Lord, like, God, change my heart. I want your heart for adoption. Whether we ever adopt or not as a family, my heart is rooted in fear. And I don't want to make a decision out of a place of fear. And so I scoured the internet for a gospel-centered resource on adoption, and I found an amazing book by Russell Moore called Adopted for Life. And I'd heard a podcast by him about adoption, so I was like, that was really solid. Like sounds like something that I need. And so I got the audiobook, listened to the whole audiobook in like a couple days, and it honestly transformed my perspective. I went from a heart rooted in fear, kind of terrified of the thought of moving forward in adoption, to a heart of like, wow, this is something I could really see for our family. I saw the beauty of the gospel in adoption. I guess a lot of the fears that I had, he unpacked in the book, and it was just very practical, very wisdom filled, very like hope filled. He didn't shy away from the challenges, but talked about like Christ meets us in those challenges. And when he calls us to something, he equips us for that. And, you know, one of the things he said that really, really changed my heart was, he said to the women who were reading the book, do you long most to get pregnant or most to be a mom? Because if you long most to be a mom, then that's something that you could have through adoption. And it was like totally just psh. And for me, I think I was, idolizing, like, yeah, I really, really want to get pregnant. That was the only path to motherhood in my brain, like deep in my heart. And his question really like dug into my heart and helped me see that, truly, like, I long to be a mom, and maybe adoption is the path that God would have for our family and for us to become parents. And so it even got my heart like, opening up in a way that I had never really been open to before.
Yeah, for me, he actually spoke to guys, and I was that guy that he spoke to.
So you got the audiobook after I finished it. I was like, babe, you need to read this.
She finished it in 48 hours. Every time I tell the story, it gets shorter. But she finished it really quickly, and then she's like, okay, you need to read this. And I said, okay, great. And so about 4 days in, she's like, how's it going? I said, well, I think I finished chapter 1. I'm started on chapter 2. And she's like, ooh, you need to go faster, bud. Faster.
Like, you're not finished?
You
Come on!
Way faster. So I picked it up. I think I finished it in a couple weeks. But the book really shifted my focus from all of the hard things about adoption,
right,
which we all know about, like Kristen mentioned them earlier, to the beauty and the joy and the just amazingness of adoption.
Yeah.
And that was, a big shift in my mind. I even cried a little bit at the end, I was on a run listening to the last chapter. I'm like, oh, no.
Yes.
So, great book. It shifted our minds radically when it comes to adoption, and it gave it even a fuller picture of the gospel for me, not just adoption, because obviously those two things are very linked together. So, anyway, back to what I said at the beginning, he actually spoke to the guys, and he said, here's to the guy that his wife gave him the book and said, you need to read this. And I'm like, oh, that's me. Yeah, thank
Listen
you.
up.
Yeah, I'm listening. So anyway, that kind of started our journey of adoption pursuit intentionally.
Yeah.
And we were like headed that direction now. Okay.
Let's pray about this.
This is great.
Like, we had prayed about it over the years, but for the first time we were like, let's actually pray about this, like every day, really seriously, and seek the Lord on whether or not we should move forward. Like, because we were kind of feeling like maybe this is actually the path that we should pursue. So it was a different sort of seeking the Lord for adoption, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we did, and after a few weeks, we were both like, yeah, I mean, we don't really see any reason not to. We have been married for, at this point, it was 9 years, so it was last summer. And we just felt like, yeah, we have a stable marriage. We have a home like we could bring kids into. We long for children. We desire to be parents. Wow. Yeah. We saw the beauty of adoption, like the gospel. We were feeling more equipped for the challenges, I guess, knowing that God would strengthen us and help us be with us on this journey. Like, we were just like, okay, let's do this. So we told our families, and they were all so supportive, so excited, just like, wow. But something that we had to decide on was whether we were going to pursue international, domestic infant, or foster. And each one of those paths to adoption are beautiful and wonderful. But we were really drawn to the international adoption path, and we had connections to the country of Ukraine because my sister at the time was dating a Ukrainian. Her church here in Texas is one of his supporting churches. So he was here visiting. They met, started a long distance relationship. And through him, her now husband, we got to know a ton about the country of Ukraine, all of the orphans in Ukraine, the need for many of them to be adopted. Obviously, there are a lot of sibling groups that need to be adopted from the country of Ukraine. Just the culture, the language, like we were learning so much about it that there was just this natural interest. And a lot of my family had traveled over to Ukraine. And so naturally, we started looking into that country. We found an agency who does adoptions in Ukraine. We got connected with them through a referral. They were amazing. And then we started the paperwork process. So this was last summer, June, is when we officially started the paperwork.
Yeah, one other thing about Ukraine is that they have one of the shortest time frames from start to finish. And, in some cases, international adoptions can take 2, 3, 5 years.
Right, some countries.
By the time you actually close the adoption, it's a different child you're adopting. It's amazing how long it can take. And so Ukraine was very attractive in that sense that it was such a short period of time.
Yeah. It was like, oh, this could happen in a year. It was almost like the same amount of time as a pregnancy. In the sense, it was like a lot of adoptions can start to finish for Ukraine can be like 10 months to a year. So it was like very close to what a natural pregnancy would be. It was like, oh, this would be amazing if this actually worked out, but also a little terrifying. Like, whoa.
It happened fast, yeah. But it actually did end up happening in like 10 or 11 months. I think it was, even mid-COVID. So
I know. The one thing about Ukraine, I know some countries are like this, but every country has the process is so different for every country. So for Ukraine, something kind of unique about it is that they don't give out referrals typically in advance.
What does a referral mean?
A referral is basically them saying, here's a child that we are matching you with. As adoptive parents, here's the child that we want to match you with to adopt, child or children. So a lot of times countries will give that referral in advance, give you that photo, the description, here's the child, and then you move forward with the adoption to pursue that child. But Ukraine, they do blind adoptions. That's their standard process. And so you go through all the paperwork, submit everything, they approve you, they invite you to their country, you go to your appointment, and that is when they give you the referral.
It's pretty terrifying.
When you're in their country at your actual adoption appointment. So you go in not knowing anything. Now, you do set parameters, so it's not like, okay, it could be any child from 0 to 18. Just a little whack on the face.
I didn't do anything. I just took it.
No, I'm like, my hands were all over the place. So we did set some parameters because we were like, this is hard. I mean, that was hard deciding
it's tough, yeah.
It's like, but they say like, you've got to, don't just, I guess out of compassion, like, oh, we'll adopt a sibling group of 6 or something where, and maybe you're not really equipped for that age-wise or financially or whatever. Like, be realistic about what you genuinely think would be a good fit for your family, what you feel like you're equipped to handle. And so as we were thinking and praying through that, we thought, like, honestly, we are open to kids, like, even a little bit older, not necessarily just younger kids. And so we put our age range from 0 to 10 years old. And then we were open to boys or girls, but we really wanted a sibling group. We really both felt that it would be really awesome to bring home a sibling group that they could stay together. We would, go from a family of 2 to a family of maybe 4 or 5. Like, that was exciting to us. Like, we were excited about that. So we did all the paperwork throughout the whole summer into the fall. And then last December of 2020, we submitted our dossier, which is your massive stack of
so we've worked on
so much
stack of paperwork. I mean, it's literally this thick for 5 months, something like that. Maybe
June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Maybe like 7 months.
Okay.
6 or something. Maybe
something like that. 6 months. And you get it all together and you've sent it off to the state and you've gotten those back and there's paperwork that's been flying around and you're consolidating all of it. And now you have all of these official documents that have the stamps and the seals and everything. And you're going to put it in an envelope and send it across the world.
And they're all originals. So if anything gets lost, you have to start from scratch.
How'd you feel about that?
And they're time sensitive. So they expire within 6 months. So if they get lost and delayed. So that was,
that was a little worrisome.
Our life has been filled with so many moments of really trusting God and surrendering. I mean, every pregnancy, it's like, wow, I feel like God has taken us on such a journey. And this adoption journey was similar in that there were things that were completely out of our control. We had to totally surrender and just trust the Lord in so many ways. And Isaiah 26:3 was actually a verse that I was meditating on throughout the whole process. And it says, you keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. And there's so many opportunities through our journey, maybe your journey, to just be anxious, to be afraid, to be fearful, to not trust the Lord. And then you don't experience peace. You don't experience that peace that passes understanding because you're looking to your own efforts. You're looking to control. You're looking to somehow like get the thing that you want to make it happen. And I just remember that verse over and over, God using that to just, I guess, minister to my heart. Like, he will keep me in perfect peace if my mind is stayed on him as I trust him. I trust him for every part. So yeah, shipping off our dossier, handing it to the DHL guy, like,
just another opportunity.
Like, double box this. Do you understand, like, the significance of this package? Do not lose it.
What's crazy is, just random aside, it gets there in 3 days. Like, from here.
Yeah, we had to like ship it
to
fastest.
The door in Ukraine for our what's her name?
Our facilitator.
Facilitator, yeah. Mm-hmm. So to the facilitator in like 3 days flat. It's crazy.
Crazy.
So fast. So she got it. And then she submitted it, and we're off to the races. Now it's official. Now the government has our documents. All before this, the U.S. knew we were adopting, but Ukraine didn't even know our name. And so this is like, oh, now we're in it for real.
Yeah.
And they've received it and responded and said, okay, great.
Oh, that they received it.
That they received
it.
Yeah. They didn't approve it. It's
no.
not approved, but
Not
this
approved.
is like, oh, what's the other thing? They go on like Christmas break.
Oh, yeah, for like a month.
Month and a half. So they kind of shut down December 1st, and they're done through middle of January or something.
Yeah.
So we were barely got it in before. Barely got it in.
That was the best Christmas present, turning in that dossier.
And then it's just a waiting game.
Yeah. So then we waited and waited throughout Christmas, which our waiting, I understand, is very short. I know I've talked to some families, like they will submit their dossier and it will be a long time, like months and months and months before they hear anything.
Again, it depends on the country, depends on the timing.
Yeah, Ukraine, we actually heard back, it was a little over a month, which to me, I mean, I think that's really fast.
Yeah.
So we heard back from them. Our agency actually called us because Ukraine communicates with our agency. The facilitator in Ukraine talks to our agency. They work together. They called us and said, I answered the phone. You weren't even home. And they called me. And I'm like, I saw the number of the agency and I thought, this seems way too soon to be good news. Like this, oh no, did we get rejected? Like what happened? So I answer it and I'm kind of like expecting bad news. And she just said, hey, Kristen, I want to personally tell you that Ukraine has accepted your dossier and congratulations, you are approved to adopt from their country. And it was like, so I called Zach and it was a huge moment. I mean, such a huge praise. Like, it was just such a milestone. So then we waited for another few weeks to get our appointment date, and Ukraine sent us our appointment date, and then basically we got that information, and we had to be in Ukraine like 3 weeks later.
Yeah, this is like the end of January, and our date ended up being, you need to be here by February 23rd. We're like, okay.
Wow.
Book the flights.
Thankfully,
Andre and Alyssa live over there.
So my sister got married during this process, moved to Ukraine, actually about a month before we traveled over. So the newlyweds opened up their new home and actually purchased a bed so that we could sleep on something and hosted us. And that was just amazing. It was like a piece of home away from home, going through something so like as intense as international adoption and to have family in the country. I mean, it was just so huge.
Built-in translator with Andre?
Yes, built-in. He helped us navigate like all the COVID testing in country, and there was a lot of extra steps because of COVID, but it all worked out. We had our appointment, and through the appointment, we were matched with the two boys that we ended up traveling down, overnight train, 15 hours to the region where they were located, met them, fell in love with them immediately. I mean, that moment of meeting the boys, I would say, was the most intense moment. I remember we pulled into the orphanage.
It's crazy.
You know, most people in Ukraine don't speak English, and so we couldn't really communicate with anyone except through our translator. She traveled with us down there. And as we're pulling in, she didn't really tell us like, okay, we're pulling in now. We just kind of drove in. And I was like, babe, I think this is it. Like, you know, and my heart's pounding, and we walk in and they take us to the orphanage director's office. And then they kind of debrief us and fill us in on a bunch of stuff about the boys and the background and all that. And we're just kind of like waiting for that moment of, okay, now let's go meet them. And as they're still in the middle of sharing information with us, one of the ladies leaves, and then like 5 minutes later, she comes back and the doors open to the office, and our two little boys come running over to us, and they literally, one runs to each of us and they give us the biggest hugs, and they just kind of hold on to us, looking up with huge smiles, and we're just like, we were sitting, so we kind of stand up and like hug them, and it was just like the sweetest moment. I think I expected it to be maybe awkward, or just like, I thought maybe they would be scared of us. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, this is a huge moment for us and them. But the fact that they ran to us and gave us hugs, and like that was their kind of their posture towards us from that point on, like always. And so we went to another room and just spent time with them. We couldn't talk to them because they spoke Russian and we spoke English, but we played like Legos, and we brought some games and coloring, and just played, and like just we're together.
A little bit,
so I don't know, that moment I feel like was a huge answer to prayer. The way that we met them, the way that they received us, the way we embraced them, it was just like we were always meant to be together. It was just almost too perfect in some ways. Yeah. What were you feeling?
It was just intense. I felt a little awkward in that moment because it was like, this is weird. There's like 8 people around watching this happen, and they didn't tell us, and it was wonderful, but it was
it was different than we imagined. It was like, oh,
these expectations. It was great. We had a blast that day. We didn't get to spend much time with them. Honestly, it was like half an hour because it was towards the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then we came back the next day, and we actually got to take them out for 3 or 4 hours. And we went to a mall and did like jungle gym and stuff. So we actually got to spend some good time with them. Found out they like pizza.
Yes. Oh, but okay. So Zach was playing with the boys at one point when we were at the jungle gym on the second day. This was like the sweetest moment ever.
So it's one of those
I was like crying.
pits with like the foam blocks or whatever, and you fall into it. And anyway, I was in there getting rowdy with them, and the little one, the younger one, had fallen in, and I grabbed him and lifted him up, and he's like, "Oh, Papa," you know, like he was already calling me Papa, and I'm like, "Oh goodness," I was
like,
done at that point. Kristen was done. We were all done. We're like, all right. So anyway, that was a great afternoon, and by this time we're like, oh, are we just gonna leave and say no? Like, no, we're adopting these kids.
Yeah,
like, this is happening.
We already loved them.
So we go back to the orphanage, and we got to catch a train back.
Yeah, we were on
and it was a tight schedule.
Oh yeah, because the train was leaving.
It was like
one train out.
3:30. We're dropping the kids off at 3:45. We got to leave because it's a 20-minute drive, and the train leaves at 4:30. Quick turnaround. And so we go there, and then they don't let us go inside, and it's like we wave to the boys as they go inside, and we just basically drop them off, and we're like, "We'll be back for you. We love you." Both of us.
Yes.
Because they turn around and they're like waving to you, like, "Bye, Papa." Like, oh.
That was so hard.
So hard.
With Ukraine, they typically require that the adoptive family travels 3 times to their country before they can actually bring the kids home. So it's a long process. First trip is meeting the kids and agreeing, like choosing the ones you're going to adopt, agreeing to the adoption. Second one is your court date in Ukraine to make it legal in country. And then third trip is to actually bring the kids home. So that first trip, we were thinking like, this is so hard. We're saying bye to them, and now it's going to be months before we can actually bring them home. Like, So it was very emotional, very hard. I think it was really hard for them too. They were asking the facilitator, like, when are we going to see them again? And just for them to know, oh, these are going to be our parents. They're already calling him Papa. Mama didn't come until later, but it did come. And then for them to know, like, okay, and just, I don't know, I was thinking of their little hearts, like the fear of, are they going to come back? Are they really going to adopt us? It was just really, really hard. So we left, did some more paperwork, went home, flew all the way back to the US, and then went back a month later. And that trip, we went back down to their region, and we had our court date. Everything was finalized in court. The most amazing, hugest answer to prayer was that the judge that we got assigned in that region is one of the few judges in Ukraine who favors waiving the third trip, because they see the third trip as being unnecessary unless there's complications with the adoption, and they see the value of kids being united with their new parents rather than like making them wait another month or two.
Because really, all it is just a waiting period. There's nothing else that has to be done. It's just wait and then come back later.
They have a mandatory 30-day waiting period after court. It's just something they have in their laws. And so this judge in court, we had to actually verbally request. We said, we request that the judge waives the third trip, blah, blah, blah. So we had to speak it, translator translates, and then she went away to deliberate, and then she was going to come back and tell us like the verdict on everything. So she went away for like 15 minutes, and we're just sitting there like, like, Lord, please, because it's the difference between we're taking these kids right now, like, this trip, they're coming home with us, or we're going back home. And it's a long journey to get there and to get down to the, like, a lot of travel. Worth it, but just like, oh, my heart was like, please. So she came back in and kind of went through all the little things, like all the technicalities, and then
get on with the program.
Yeah, and then she said something and got kind of, excited, and then our translator, because we don't know what she's saying, it's Russian, and the translator translates, congratulations, you've officially adopted these boys, and the judge waived the third trip. And so we were like,
another fist pump.
Thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
So excited. So then they had one more night at the orphanage, and then the next morning we went and picked them up, brought them back up to the Kyiv region, which is where we were flying out, stayed with my sister again for like a week because we had to do a bunch of like final paperwork in Kyiv, and then flew home and brought the boys back. And that was just like the most amazing that we got to bring them home.
It was a whirlwind. It was
such a whirlwind.
Because we had to pack for that trip.
Yeah.
Not knowing whether or not we were going to bring them home or not. So many things.
We had to pack as if we could bring them home. So we had their little suitcases, all their clothes that we bought, everything ready. So yeah, that would have been the biggest blow for the judge to say, sorry, come back in a month or two, and to take all those little bags back.
God just opened every single door. Our facilitator in Ukraine was so good.
Amazing.
It went as smooth as it could have gone, I feel like.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So then we brought them home, and here we are, just over 3 months. A lot of you have asked, like, do they speak English? And no, they don't. They only spoke Russian.
They're better.
They're learning English, and we're learning some Russian. And so between the little bit of Russian that we know, the little bit of English that
You're
they know.
Russian?
Well, no, we've learned a lot of Russian.
I'm not learning Russian.
No, we're not like learning, like taking classes, but we've
yeah.
learned so much Russian. I mean, there's so many words we say.
True.
I'm like, I'm saying things in Russian.
You have to say it to get by with some words, but we're not actively like
studying.
Russian yet.
I know, we're not that ambitious yet. Maybe someday.
Well, the kids need to learn
Yeah, they need to learn English. Yeah, because they obviously live in America now, so to be able to talk to friends. And it would be cool, though, if they could keep up their Russian. I would love that. And them having each other, I think, helps because they talk to each other in Russian a lot. So yeah, it's been a big transition. I would say overall, like a really good transition. I feel like they have bonded to us to them. They've fully embraced being in our family, being a family together. The word for family in Russian is semya. And so all the time when we're all sitting together and they'll like grab our dog Sadie and like pull her onto the couch and say,
they love.
Semya,
They really love her,
and do like a big group hug, Semya. And I'm just like, oh, Semya. Like, it's so sweet. And all of our extended family, all the aunts and uncles, which is tyotyas and dyadyas in Russian, they've all fully embraced the boys too. And they're like, automatically have like this massive family of cousins. And it's just been amazing to see God work. Yes, we've had a lot of challenges too. It's lots of challenges. The language barrier by far has been the hardest because you just can't have those instant like heart conversations where you're like, okay, let's work through this struggle. Or if there's a conflict even between them, it's just like typical conflict between brothers, kids. It's like even navigating that's hard with the language barrier. We do a lot of Google Translate. So yeah, the language barrier is something that I think it's interesting to be growing in your love for someone else so deeply and not to be able to fully communicate with them at the same time. Like, it's a weird dynamic I haven't had in any other relationship. And so that's something that is like, okay, I know this isn't going to be forever. One day we're going to be able to fully talk and fully share and fully have those heart conversations. And I can't wait for that day.
But God has been gracious through all of it.
So gracious, so faithful.
And, even in this time, because of the language barrier, you're doing other things that you might not do.
That's true.
Because of the language barrier. And so you're able to do things that...
Like a lot of charades.
Little Neanderthal acting and stuff, hand motions and grunts.
Hey, it gets a lot communicated. Our boys are really good at charades. They do full reenactments at dinner. Like, they want to tell us a story of something they did. And it's like
good at that
full
game.
reenactment.
Honestly, they'd probably be good at that game later on.
So yeah, thank you so much for all of your prayers. I know over the years, a lot of you have reached out and emailed me personally and just said, hey, I'm praying for you. Just through our journey of infertility, recurrent miscarriage. Y'all have walked with us through this journey of just unfulfilled longings and trusting the Lord. So thank you for your support and your encouragement. And a lot of you have also asked if we would ever consider adoption. Well, here we are. We considered it. We moved forward. We adopted. And now we are a family of 4 with 2 really active, rambunctious little boys that keep us on our toes and have brought so much joy and like vibrancy, is that a word?
Yeah.
Into our lives. So we wouldn't change it for anything. We're so grateful. God has a unique story for each one of our lives. And sometimes it turns out totally different than what we ever would have imagined. But as we look at our life and look around and look back, we wouldn't change it.
Can't wait to see what God does going forward and get to know these boys better.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.